the big pulls that you can get going with a double arms warrior, but what's this red paladin going to be able to do?
Yeah, probably just a lot of damage. That's why they bring him.
Yeah,
but what I'm very excited about,
I agree.
as you said about the marksman hunter, not having that combo res is pretty huge. Absolution only having 1 combo res versus SPG Esports having 2. Here we see the first trash back getting killed. Holy Paladin going super low there. There's a lot of incidental cleave here, which is why we said that rogues are actually really good here because of the cleave, the cheat death. But Absolution destroying this trash back, just being done with it.
Yeah, and they're ready to just jump in on the boss. They're going to get that pull going right now. SPG Esports having a little bit more of a difficult time here, but it looks like they will be able to stay pretty much in tow as they are going to be pulling that first boss. But look at this marksmanship damage that's coming out here. This is the burst that we expected, and they're not going for that utility. It looks like he is going to be running that lone wolf, and now some of the damage is going to be coming out from the boss here, but it should just melt.
Hopefully, and then obviously they have those warriors too for those executes when it does end up going low. SPG Esports having the red and the rogue fighting on top of the damage.
I mean, by no means is Absolution's damage, but Zach going to fall down, and now when you don't have the battle res, this is just going to be a full team wipe. This should be enough for SPG Esports to just pull ahead very early here. They're going to have to get their entire team wiped, so that's going to be full deaths onto the clock as well. So that's an additional 25 seconds, and they have to run all the way back.
Yeah, I'm very surprised by this as well. DKs are so well equipped to handle this boss with the Dark Smash. Guardian Druid is actually having a little bit of an issue because it does hit incredibly hard. Tyrannical, such high kills, you kind of need to rotate cooldowns. You do have an Iron Bark from the healer Druid, but now Absolution being so far behind, having to pick up some extra trash back. The Falcons that spawned on top of the bridge, over the bridge, and Esports now being 40% on the boss and just looking like it's going all right.
So when I was actually watching the last match play out, you know, you're in chat and everyone's just like, Ravager nerf Inc, Ravager nerf Inc, and yeah, it's funny to joke about it because the damage was absolutely insane, but we just didn't see the weakness of Warriors. What is it? They bring no utility, and they don't have the ability to get the battle rests going, and when something like that happens, it seems like it is almost a high-risk strategy to be bringing to them. That's one of the reasons that maybe a BM Hunter would make more sense, but the Affliction Warlock really did shine. Now SPG Esports is going to have a death of their own.
They should have 2 combat rests, but they look like they're not even opting to use it. The boss still at 10%. They're going to be able to kill this boss just fine without that warrior being around. So they're probably saving that for a bigger moment later on. 10%, as I said, it's going to be able to just get that down anyway.
I think that Discipline's really good to see as well. Visp is going to go down, but the boss should fall without a problem. Cheat Death also being procced onto the rogue, but they don't really need to use those combat reses. And it goes in the same vein as something that we saw a little bit earlier. In that Nels, when they had that player go down, they just do a wipe, right? The reason is because the amount of damage that you can get out with a player just being able to stick to a boss is more important than any cooldown. But holding on to a battle res is just very huge for later on, especially with this lead that they have amassed. Absolution now still has 37% left on Yimron. And if you're just tuning in, want to remind you, this is a Sanguine Quaking Tyrannical key. So with the Tyrannical, it's going to take a little bit longer to get these bosses down. But Absolution, after this wipe, definitely has a long road ahead of them.
Yeah, we saw SPG Esports having the warrior died first, and then the rogue and the paladin both died. The rogue proccing cheat death, so he effectively didn't die. But of that last ability, the boss was just at 1%. They just assumed that they would probably kill it before that, and just ended up taking a lot of damage. We see Absolution now just 15% on the boss. They should not have anything. They have the hunter standing up there, but as he was talking about hunters a lot already, and like that hunter not having that combat res actually ended up being a huge deal for them.
Yeah, I think we're kind of in one of these scenarios, and we saw this somewhat in the last match as well. One of these teams is incredibly safe and the other one is not. Absolution is much more all in. We have another death coming in though from SPG Esports. These guys are just not able to move nearly as clean as we saw the other European teams, and that's going to result in pretty much a full team wipe here.
It looked like they were going for a pretty big pull there, but that did not pay off. These mobs, as I was talking with Sloot when we were doing the casting earlier, these have both a heal, they have a cast. They also teleport away around a lot here. Absolution, is that that's not the Mariner, is it? No, that's another big pull. Just does a lot of accidental cleave damage, and they ended up losing people because of that, and they don't have that shoot death.
This is Absolution's now chance to actually get back on the clock. Now they actually have less deaths, and they are moving through much more cleanly, but still, to go back to what we were talking about before that death came in, even though SPG Esports did have that wipe there, they still are playing overall a safer composition. You just don't have battle reses on the side of Absolution. You do have the one on the tank, but if the tank goes down, it's almost definitely going to be a wipe. SPG Esports has Rogue, which I think is one of the strongest DPS to be bringing, period. It's tanky, it can handle a lot of things, but I gotta commend a team like Absolution. With it being a plus 17 and 7.3, you can do a lot of crazy things that are less safe. Now Mariner is going to be pulled for SPG Esports, and we're gonna have to see if they can handle this, because this damage seems to be quite threatening.
There is so much damage. Quaking coming out there in the end as well. We saw the Resto Druid using his Tranquility. Are they going to get another big AoE here? They're also going to have the ads die just around that time too. As we mentioned before, the Mariner does go down. Having the ads die, the dogs die before the Mariner is very devastating, because that Mariner will stand in that Sanguine, heal back up a lot. They're having so much, so low HP, man. Everyone.
Yeah, I think that the timing there, like you started to point out, really was incredible. You know, the dogs didn't go down until the Mariner was already down. They're able to deal with the Sanguine. You know, you think of Sanguine Quaking as being one of the easier keys, and I think that it is nice that it starts off here with that. But once you get into this portion of the boat with all of these tight corners and crevices, you really do need to be playing towards the key, because when you're at the Mariner, for example, if you are bunched up in a corner, you can be overlapping on the Quaking and take a lot of raid-wide damage. It's going to be hard for the healer to raise up the squad.
We see Absolution now pulling the second boss, Harboron, and remember, they were the team that were behind. They wiped on the first boss, they're pulling the second boss first. SPG Esports having a lot of issues with that. They're actually doing a super they pull the Grimelord up there with the champions, so they're dealing with the champions now, make sure that they get interrupted. Now they're quite a bit behind too, once that Quaking comes out too, and Absolution dealing with the boss, getting the stuns and avoiding that site. We saw people dying from that site in the game before as well, which was one of the few mistakes that the team seemed to be doing.
With it being tyrannical, though, if someone does go down, especially looking at Zach here, if they do go down, the lack of reses can be the opportunity for SPG to really shine, and they're going to just get some food, get that last meal in before they pull this second boss, and see what they can do on the damage meter. Their single target, in theory, should be lower, in my opinion, than that of Absolution. I think bringing that Marksman Hunter is definitely a smart route to take. We can see the Warriors just shining at the current moment, pulling slightly ahead. We'll have to see if Jed Slims can catch back up on the meter. Harboron instantly going to take the cheat death off of the Rogue for SPG Esports.
Yeah, Absolution, you mentioned the DPS, but single target DPS isn't all that much in this fight, or isn't everything at least, because he does spawn that big ad that you need to interrupt, and then he spawns 4 ads to fragments that you need to stun, deal with. They have very good burst DPS that can just DPS them, stun them, and deal with them. And on the same on the account of not having combat rest, this fight doesn't really do all that much damage on the tank, so I'd be very surprised if we see a tank go down as the first player for Absolution's team.
Trekkie, I don't know if anyone told you this, though. The only thing that matters, even in the Mythic Dungeon Invitational, is the meters. That is the only thing that matters. That is what we are all here for. We just want to be #1 on the meters. But we can see SPG Esports has actually been able to put out a considerable amount of DPS, but Absolution is definitely still in the lead. They also do only have 5 deaths, so we have SPG Esports having that as well to overcome. But Harboron, like you mentioned, not doing too much damage right now, but the real estate is going to be quickly moving away from both of these squads.
Yeah, SPG Esports were a bit cornered in one of the corners. Now they have a bit of space, while Absolution is on the side where they have a lot of space filled with these pools. However, they're doing a very good job at keeping them away. I believe that was probably the wrong direction to move, though, but they're going to have the servitor spawn there. They're going to interrupt it, stun it, and cleave it. And Warriors, I believe, do very, very good cleave damage when there's 2 targets as well, if I'm correct.
Yeah, definitely. And I think the thing to note, though, as you mentioned, the placement of the bad has been very good for Absolution, but SPG Esports just really catching up here. And look who's on the top. It's going to be that Ret, able to get out some solid cleave on the ads, also doing a decent amount of work single target. But oh, just like that, the Ret is going to go down. I can only imagine what Chad is saying.
Absolution pulled this boss way ahead of SPG Esports, but SPG Esports now only being 6% behind. They did have a death there, did rest him.
Look what happens, exactly. Like we talk about just, if Absolution, if they had one of the DPS go down, they would have had to use their only battle res. SPG Esports able to just toss it out there and pull up that Ret.
For me, that's the healer going down for SPG. That's another 5 seconds. Not gonna make a difference. The boss is still gonna die. He was there at 2%. That is another 5 seconds. So I'm gonna super excited to see this big pull here from Absolution. They're pulling everything. They're doing just as Weezing Harpies did in the last pull.
The one question I do have with that, I would have been a little bit more nervous. They go right out of the gates, but that is going to mean that their Holy isn't going to have too much mana because he had just gotten up from that res. We'll have to see if that does become a problem, but they want to be getting this down quick anyway, and we can see the Warriors investing everything here. They're going to go Avatar, they're going to go Ravager, but need to start moving things outside of that Sanguine.
They also had both Fears actually go off earlier. However, the Warriors can get rid of it and everything too, so they should be fine, but both of those actually went off, and it's not looking like a good pull. Sack going down, Nost also going down there, but the rest point is very close there. I can just go back. This is a really big pull. It might still pay off for them, even if they've had 3 deaths, I believe, so far. A bunch of the mobs did end up healing a little bit due to the Sanguine. But SPG Esports doing the safer pull here, going for the first 3 packs, I believe. They're having issues with the healers actually standing there, just getting the heals off. Absolution definitely looking in a lot better shape, even if that was a very sloppy version of what we saw Weezing Harpies do.
This is the thing. We've already started to see it. I mean, this is going to be our 3rd day overall of the Mythic Dungeon Invitational. Sometimes deaths are just worth it, but we'll have to see. This one from SPG Esports did not seem favorable at all. We do see now their tank's going to go down as well. They had just lost the Warrior. That's going to be 14 deaths on the board for them. Absolution already pulling this mini-boss before Helia, getting out their numbers. Wow, a lot of deaths coming in from SPG Esports, and they were going with the safer pool.
Yeah, they went with a slightly smaller, I believe. They might have actually gone for the same one. It was in a small corner, so actually looks basically empty. They skipped 1 small pack, actually, so they did about the same kind of pull, but they had a lot of issues with the healers just standing out healing. Yep. Then they moved them up to where the spawn point is and just basically threw bodies at them before and just racked up the death counter to 15.
I will say too, the other groups that we did see, the other 2 teams had pretty incredible splits on this dungeon. A little bit slower from both of these teams, and I think one of the reasons why is I think the Affliction Warlock just gave so much single target. I really do think that was huge with the Tyrannical Key. We're gonna have to see here. We'll get more of an idea of what this Marks can really do, but the Warlock also does have that battle res. SPG Esports now still trying to clean up their trash before they can get down to Helia, as Absolution does start the boss right now with those tentacles.
Yeah, and they've already used their combat res, and they do not only have one from the tank, so the tank damage from these destructive tentacles is pretty intense. DKs are pretty well equipped with dealing with it, so I would be surprised if we see something like that happen. Could happen. SPG Esports is basically banking for a wipe on Absolution's side to be able to take this game. But we saw, compared to the game we saw earlier today, this has been a way more sloppy, and so many mistakes has happened in this game compared to the series we saw earlier.
Well, and you talk about the wipe too. It's actually just like, it's such a likely scenario in a lot of ways compared to what we see from other teams. Zach just has to die and it's a full team wipe. Like that does make this composition very fragile. If the tank is the only one with the battle res, and Trekkie, when we were casting last weekend, you were actually classifying battle reses as 2 different types of battle reses. Battle reses that can get up the tank, and battle reses that the tank has. So they do not have the ones to get up the tank here. So Absolution needs to be very clean. They need to do this perfectly. We do see SPG Esports is now also on the boss, and they are just clearing up those first 3 tentacles.
Absolution finishing off the first phase of the fight, killing those tentacles, as we talked about a little bit before. They're not all that hard, but the tentacle that goes on the tank, or the tank has to deal with, is pretty big deal. SPG Esports having another death. They do have that combat rest for this fight, so they really needed that, but they need to be able to spread out on the correct side here too. and the Rogue actually standing in it, but he looked like he had Cloak just to be able to cleave those ads just fine. Absolution now gonna be having to have the balls go down once, I believe. Anyway, they're not gonna be able to do it with before that, and I don't believe, unless they have anyone go down, they're not gonna have to. So they should have this in the bag, unless they do end up wiping, which is a scenario that could happen, but this part of the fight is not very heavy in the tanks either. So Zac dying, I don't really see as an option.
Yeah, I mean, if it happens, though, it just is going to spell defeat for them. We're going to see that Rhett going to be going down here again on the side of SPG Esports. Now, one of the nice things about Rhett is the fact that they do have a lot of utility, right? They have a lot of ways to stay alive.
Not when you're dead.
But, you know, sometimes you can just go straight through that bubble. Hell, you're going to be able to bring him down, and they've already used so many battle reses here, so it doesn't look like they do have one to get him up, and that is just going to cost them so much time. They are completely banking on Zac dying. In intermission here, we see Helia going down. This should be the only time that she actually does submerge. After that, they just need to get through 7%. Honestly, with the Warriors, too, even if Zac dies, I think they would have it with 7%. I mean, you can do stuff like you can taunt off as a warrior and just do die by the sword at like this far into the fight. So it looks like this should be a win for Absolution here. SPG Esports still a man down with 82% left on the boss, and there goes the Warrior as well. Have fun doing that, Rogue. At least you're going to be #1 on the damage meter, though. That is always a reason to smile.
And they have another 50 seconds to go on the death counter, too. This is like 2 people dead. That's not going to be recoverable. Absolution, unless they do a full team wipe here, they are going to take this first game in Maw of Souls. Still very sloppy and still a lot of mistakes compared to the previous series from both teams here, actually. So it's going to be interesting to see what ends up doing in the next series. 73%, still another 3%. Those 2 Warriors not going to be able to execute this boss.
Yeah, and also they shouldn't have another submerge phase, but they could. Even if they got another one, like they are just so far in the lead at this point. And it looks like they're going to be able to get this one down.
And SPG, just having that 1 DPS, probably going to see
This
2.
is another submerge, though.
Yeah, we actually see a second one from Absolution, just 1% off, yeah. SPG is probably going to have 2 or 3, though, with only 1 DPS alive.
The second Helia pops up, she's a goner. They should be able to take her out here, and then we'll see that chest pop up, and they'll be able to get this victory. But the thing to note is this is like, what, 3 minutes slower than the splits that we saw coming out of the first game? I believe it was around 15 minutes. But, hey, they get loot either way, even if it's not a 3 chest. SPG Esports, though, they're probably going to be getting artifact power.
Yeah, so unfortunately,